my name is Leah. I am from Shift&Heal.com, and welcome to the third part of our series. This one is titled Mindful Communication, and our Korea for today is called the Shunya breath. I just really love this concept in the Japanese of ma, and I have a little video to kind of introduce it and what it is about.
Ma. So it's a silence and space in between. So this is a character, ma. This is very important in Japanese and in our culture, in our living. This character outside, yeah, this looks gate, and this is the character of gate, and inside there is sun. So the sun in between gates. So ma, silence in between. You can see in Japanese architecture, for example, even Zen garden, Japanese art, as I spoke before. And also, importantly, you may notice in our conversation, in Japanese conversation, there is a space and silence a lot. And this space is very sacred. This silence is very sacred, physically and also mentally. So we respect this space and of silence in between our activities, in between our conversation, in between physical.
So I found this concept of ma so intriguing because the Japanese really has a whole word for it.
18th century Japanese theatrical writer called Chikamatsu Monzaemon for Kabuki Joruri, he said, 真実は被膜の中にある. Means the truth is in between. So, ma, this space of silence and stillness is where we find the truth, because the words can only deliver what intend to do.
So that was so interesting to me because I usually don't think about the spaces in between when I'm communicating with people. But when I really took in the concept and looked around, I saw that the space is it's everywhere. So for example, I love doing design, and in the designing field, when you have like the typography, like the fonts, we call it kerning. So kerning is the space in between letters. And so there's a whole thing for that in design. And then in the first one with this word awkwardly, the edges of the characters touch each other. And so as you can see here in the D, L, and Y, it's not like so precise when you look at it, but it's all the same space. So going to the next one, letters are moved an equal amount. And this, look at it. The spaces, you can hardly see them. But the third one, you adjust the spaces depending on each letter. So A and W have more space. W and A in this part has a little bit more space. And so I'm like, oh, I can see space everywhere. Also, when in music, when people play the piano or the instrument, when I thought about it, the spaces in between is what actually makes the music. Like if you just imagine someone banging on the keys, that's not really music, at least to me. And so the space is really that important part. And so going back to Ma and the breath, which is our first practice for today. The shunya breath is just the space in between breaths. So in Kundalini Yoga, our teacher Katrina defines this as this. So you take your in breath and the space between the in breath and the out breath, that's called shunya. And then out breath, and then you'll have another shunya in the middle of the two breaths. So it's always present in the breath, this space. We don't breathe for like 24 hours just doing in breaths and out breaths. And so let's try a couple of breaths, just noticing that space in between. Let's take a deep breath in, just holding that space in between as long as you can before taking in an out breath, and seeing that shunya breath in between again as long as you can. And let's go back to the in breath. Notice the space. Out breath. Notice the space. Just noticing, not controlling the breath. Just seeing this space in between the two breaths. And on your next out breath, you may gently open your eyes and come back to the room. So I just wanted to kind of get your experience about this breath because it's so different and it's so simple. Like, how did you find it? Was there something different when you start noticing it?
Peace. I feel like there's it's kind of silent and peace in between.
I find it very hard not to control the breath. You know, to make the lengths wider or longer.
I find it much easier to have this break after breathing out. When I breathe in, I feel more pressure to hold that space.
Thank you for sharing. That's so interesting because I feel the same way when I started just consciously doing these breaths. And so I just invite you, like, if you want to do this practice again, just notice, be curious about what you're feeling and what's coming up, why these breaths and that kind of out breath is different from this one or that, or why it's more difficult to just notice the breath and not control the breath. Thank you for the practice. And so the title of this talk is Mindful Communication. So now that you've tried it with yourself, the shunya breath, later, if we have time, we will try it in our group. So how do we do this? So just for today, just during this time, we allow a moment of silence, a breath or two between speakers. This shows respect and allows time to digest what has just been shared. And so we'll come back to this slide because this is like the group practice at the very end. And because I call this talk mindful communication, I thought it would be good to just define what mindfulness is. And I'm sure everyone here I've heard of this phrase, what is this mindfulness thing? And my favorite definition is from John Kabat-Zinn, who's a professor at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. He founded the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, which is such a wonderful program. And according to him, mindfulness is awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose, in the present moment, non-judgmentally, in the service of self-understanding, and wisdom. And so mindfulness, when I started doing this, it was so difficult. But when I found this other definition, these Japanese, they know what they're talking about. And for them, mindfulness is two parts. The character that best expresses mindfulness is this character right here, and it consists of this part, meaning now, and this bottom part, meaning heart. So I guess the original translation, the original word for mindfulness is heartfulness. And so I thought, oh, that's a very interesting way to look at it now, not just kind of observing something and being in the moment, but having that softness, having that heart in the practice really changed everything. Because when I started doing mindfulness, I felt it was so dry, it was so difficult, like I can't just focus. And so just putting the heart aspect to that was really, really helpful. And my other definition, favorite definition of the mindfulness practice is by Dr. Kristen Neff of the Mindful Self-Compassion Program. And according to her, there are three components of mindful self-compassion, which is kindness, common humanity, which is thinking of our world, the people living in this world, when we are feeling some things, we are feeling suffering and feeling happiness as well. And the third component was mindfulness. And I wanted to touch on self-compassion first before we touch on having compassion with other people, because the minute we start practicing compassion with ourselves, I found that it just automatically spreads to other people without like me doing anything special about it. And so we're just gonna watch a few more videos about ahimsa communication, the right speech in Buddhism, and satyagraha.
Itself, the language and communication, is remarkably simple. Almost everybody who studies it says two things about it: how simple it is. The next thing they say, how difficult it is. Now what makes it simple is that it basically suggests that we keep our consciousness at all times on two things: what's alive in us and what would make life more wonderful. See, what's alive in us, what's alive in others, what would make life more wonderful for us, what would make life more wonderful. Now that's simple. However, what makes it complicated, we haven't been taught to think and communicate in terms of what's alive in us. We have been taught to think in terms of moralistic judgments. Who's right, who's wrong, who's normal, who's abnormal. So when you have been educated for about 10,000 years, as we have, to think and communicate in moralistic judgments, which incidentally, all of the basic religions have warned us for centuries: do not use moralistic judgments. The Christian tradition says it very clearly: judge not others, lest ye be judged.
Right.
But we hear that, but we have been trained from the time we've been infants to think in terms of moralistic judgments. Our parents and teachers use moralistic judgments with us. That's a good girl, that's a bad boy, that's a very smart thing you did, that's a stupid thing you did. So having been trained so thoroughly for so long in moralistic judgments, it's very difficult for people to do what our training shows how to do, which is stay conscious moment by moment, what's alive in us and what would make life more wonderful. Now, the what's alive in us basically focuses on human needs. What needs of yours are being met at a given moment? What needs are not being met? What needs of others are being met, not being met? And then the what could make life more wonderful means, what do we want? What requests do we have to contribute to human needs being better met? So that's the simplicity of the process. What's alive in us and what would make life more wonderful.
So in the spirit of shunya breath, I would just like to invite you to take a brief pause And maybe ask yourself, what is alive in me? And because we're sharing this with this wonderful group, what is alive in the people sharing this space with me? And then the next question is, what needs do I have right now? How can I support myself? How can I make this life more wonderful for me and for others? And on your next breath, you may gently open your eyes if they are closed and come back to the room. So we will practice a little bit of shunya breath. As one person speaks, we will all give a collective pause, a breath or two in between, and then the next person will speak, and then another pause with our sharing for what came to you when the question was asked, like, what do you need right now, or what makes this so wonderful for you? Whenever you're ready, I invite you to share. So for me, what makes this so wonderful is just the presence of just wonderful people who I consider my friends, who we just support each other. And I just love that kind of. We were just sharing what ahimsa communication is, and in Dr. Marshall Rosenberg's terms, this is nonviolent communication. And he has this whole book, besides the NVC book, about his spiritual practices and how he came to this NVC, or nonviolent communication. Our next little video would be on
One of the
Satyagraha.
hardest questions when you think about the evolution of the human species from the standard framework of evolution, which really is about individual survival, competing, getting your genes to the next generation. One of the hardest questions within that framework is, why are people so frequently and routinely good and generous and sacrificing, right? And you know, most people think that Darwin had this idea of survival of the fittest, that really it's the most ruthless and bloodthirsty who really thrive and survive. That is not Darwin's view of human evolution at all. He really felt that sympathy is the strongest instinct that humans have. Communities that have the most sympathetic members will flourish and raise the greatest number of offspring. That notion of Darwin's led to this sense that out of the vulnerability of our offspring emerged, first of all, social structures like cooperative caregiving, and then also physiological systems shaped by evolution to help us take care of the carriers of our genes, our offspring. We have learned from neuroscience down at UCLA that if you feel physical pain, a part of your brain lights up, and if I see you have that physical pain, the same part of my brain lights up. It's as if we're wired to have the same experience of other people. Empathy is this really complicated task. It really engages the frontal lobes, these newer regions of the cortex that are involved in more complex symbolic processes like language and imagining the future. Because empathy requires that you think there's someone else out there who has feelings and thoughts that may be different from mine. That's a really complicated cognitive achievement. In my lab, the Berkeley Social Interaction Lab, we showed images of prototypical suffering to our participants. They trigger massively powerful reactions of compassion, and what we found in the brain is that a very old part of the brain called the periaqueductal gray, which is common to mammals when they take care of things, lights up when you feel compassion. So that tells us compassion is really old in the nervous system, as Darwin speculated. My students and I got really interested in social class. What does it do to the human mind?
I really like my teacher, Katrina Voss's definition of satyagraha because very simply she put it as satya being your truth and kind of graha, like the loving kindness aspect of all this. And when you put this together, you have this wonderful satyagraha. So you can be kind, but still be in your truth. You can still be you, and they can still be them. So I really, really love that definition of kindness. And so, like, what we did in ahimsa communication, ahimsa being nonviolent communication, I invite you again to just reflect on what is satyagraha to you? What is your truth? And how does kindness and love really side by side, like satyagraha, exist in you? And on your next breath, you may gently open your eyes if they are closed and come back to the room. Our last little yamas and niyamas of communication is about right speech. And I got this one from Rick Hansen of wisebrain.org. And there's 4 parts to right speech. The first one is abstinence from false speech. The next one is abstinence from divisive speech. The third one is abstinence or not doing hurtful speech. And the last one is abstinence or not doing any form of idle chatter. And I love this quote that I found, and it says, "Speak only when your words are more beautiful than silence." And I kind of want us to just reflect on that for just a few breaths. Speak only when your words are more beautiful than silence. On your next breath, you can gently open your eyes if they're closed. Let's go back to the room. Okay. So I just wanted to ask if you guys wanted to share, but it's totally optional, of which of these practices, I guess, resonated with you the most. And if you don't want to share, you can journal about it, or you just can kind of think about it. Was it the nonviolent communication? Was it the Satyagraha, the loving in truth, or was it right speech? The yamas and niyamas of communication. And so we get to, for me, what is the most present part, because I was telling the group over the weekend, I really didn't feel too safe in my space. And so this little part of the presentation just really came from that. And I think emotional safety is so important when communicating with others. And I don't think I've ever heard this from anyone except when I attended like a mindful group. And so I just really wanted to share it with you all. So emotional safety is about creating an environment where individuals feel secure, expressing their emotions without fear or judgment or harm. It is essential for well-being, mental health, and our personal growth. It encourages to open up communication, empathy, and understanding. And according to her, trusting your inner wisdom is the key. And I love how she talked about the 3 zones of tolerance. In the very middle, there's the safety zone where we're so comfortable and secure and where emotional well-being is maintained. And the blue part is the challenge zone. It's a space for growth, learning, and taking healthy risks. And at the very, very edge of it is the overwhelming zone, which is emotional distress, where learning and growth are hindered. And we spoke about doing this more in the other 2 sessions about just opening and closing our second chakra, opening and closing our space, coming to the challenge zone only when you have the space for it, and going to the safety zone if you need it. And so this little nugget has been with me. I just think about it when I'm feeling not so good. Am I being challenged or am I being overwhelmed? And then if I'm being overwhelmed, I just go back to safety by leaving a conversation, very politely, of course, and just taking care of myself. And so I put 8-part of a safety toolkit, just summarizing the 3 sessions that we've done so far, from the first to this one. Number 1, it's about respectful boundaries. So like I said, let's honor our own needs and your challenge zone. Number 2, like in our 3-part breath, always remember your purpose or just connect to it whenever you're transitioning. Number 3, it has been helpful in the mindfulness groups. They really invite people to use I expressions when they're sharing. This really helps and encourage open dialogue. The last one is the self check-ins. So I don't just do the check-ins when I'm transitioning. When I'm in a group speaking with them, I also check within myself. How am I feeling about the conversation? Am I too overwhelmed? Do I need to step out? And so I do a regular check-in and just seeing what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking. And then there's also, it's called here kindness amplification, but just if you have space, and this is not for all interactions, as you'll see in number 8, but just infuse interactions with a gentle compassion, just uplifting both yourself and others. And this is where Satyagraha comes in. Number 6 is energy transformation, which we done in our last session about the Tonglen breath. So if you have space, you can transmute energy using this Tonglen breath of giving and then sharing. Number 7 is center with breath, which is today, which is the shunya breath, and also the first of the 3 check-in breaths. So just harness your breath's calming energy before responding. And last is trust in your truth, first and foremost, and the truth in others. In yoga, we say namaste, which is I see the light in you, which is in me. And I love this so much because um, it's just honoring people's truth. And that's it. And also, while I honor their truth, I honor my truth as well. So it's believe in their capacity to navigate emotions, believe in yourself that you can navigate this space with other people and allowing other people, if they do it in kindness as well, to express themselves authentically. And so I have this because of what I experienced over the weekend. So I'm just going to do a little bit of, I'm going to retell it for those of you who haven't heard about it. So it was a very, very challenging weekend because I spent time 2 whole days, so sleeping with family. And there's one particular person in there who was just not easy to be with, to say it lightly. And so I have just this call for us wonderful souls about, and it was a call for me, and it might be a call for you as well, of just not tolerating darkness, of people who attack you, who belittle you. They should never have space in our lives. And we can do this gently without, you know, going to what they're doing. Usually and easily, I just gently leave the conversation. And with that, you are already saying a surmountable thing. And there's no need to tell other people that this person is this or that. There's no need to confront the person because, you know, some people actually like that. They like the drama. And so I just wanted to invite people who are in the like us in our group to not stand for these kinds of behavior. We can do something about it. And it's just staying in our satya. We don't even have to do like a big thing when handling this. Okay, we'll practice a little bit. So I invite you to unmute and we'll practice the shunya breath. So we will do in between breaths. I invite you to allow a mindful pause, allow a moment of silence, a breath or two between speakers, between anyone who's sharing. Again, this shows respect and allows time to digest what has just been shared. And so I just open the mic to whoever would like to share anything that is resonating with them at this moment. I don't know. I'm just excited to be here. I feel like I jumped in. I'm like, I'm so sorry I missed the first part. But this is really exciting to hear. Oh, thank you, cutie. I love that you. I'm so excited as well. I don't know if you can see it. Thank you so much. It means a lot.
Yeah, I thank you very much for these ideas, this speech, and this reminder on this very fundamental ideas of, yeah, it's, I don't know, it's like behavior, it's like fundamental idea of how do we communicate, deal with each other. I find it so natural. It's something really heartful coming from deep within. I can really connect with it. And I think it's life is very, daily life is very, fast, quick. We will always, or at least I have the feeling always to fit in something, no? An idea or some food or some speech, some words to say just here, it's quick before you go to the next point. And I think, or the next appointment, and I really think you miss a lot, no? You miss a lot of this rooting, centering, and I'm really grateful for sharing this. It's not hard to practice this, but it's like Rosenberg says, it's easy, but it's so difficult. It's, I mean, not hard to understand. You can easily follow this, but to bring it into practice is something. But I really feel grateful for being reminded, and will take this with me. Thank you.
I was just listening while while I was cooking something, but it was really beautiful because I think you also stumbled up on one of the topics that is really present for me now, like that safe space to kind of to express yourself also. It was nice. It was nice to hear about it, and that it's also kind of needed, you know, that it's not a strange thing, that it's really hard to express yourself when there's just no safe space. And I agree with Steffi. It's really, really beautiful to be reminded of this, taking that breath in between, taking a moment to shift also, and like that moment of, oh yeah, wait a minute, where am I actually? And I had to think about, you know, the writer Paulo Coelho. He has these beautiful romance. I really like a roman. You call it also in English, right? I don't know. Like these books, and there's one book. It's called The Witch of Portobello, and this woman, she also eventually does I think she does writing, and she gets totally lost in the spaces in between, and also going against the rhythm of dancing and music and stuff. And that there really is something magical in that. How did the Japanese call it? The ra or ma? Yeah, that space. I like to learn about that. Thank you.
Mm. Oh yeah, I'm unmuted, so I say all the in between. No, I like it too. It gives a lot to think about again. Yeah. And this in between, I had also but it's also in the beginning when you showed this lettering where it started. When you have like patterns, you have the negative space, and this is, I guess, also the silence or the mindful gap or whatever. So I could relate to that very much, which I don't always do. So it's a good reminder. Yeah.
Is that pause you were talking about before, right? Like the rest you have to kind of take.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
To recover or to like regain. It's really important, that space, and still so hard. Hey Katie, by the way, really nice to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you so much for your sharing. Oh, my heart is so full right now. I so totally agree. When I was reminded of this, I'm like, why am I not hearing about this more? And maybe I should just do like talk about it. And so I'm so glad that so many things resonated with everybody. I mean, this is like ancient stuff. I was saying in the other sessions, this is just ancient stuff that I kind of repackage And then I did it in like a PowerPoint presentation. But this has been as old as time. And so what we like doing is just breathing in and then letting out like a breath of gratitude and love to everyone here. All right, so I invite you to do that right now with a long, slow, deep breath in and release love and gratitude, looking at the faces of everyone who has shared this space with you. Thank you so much. So for just an overview, if you guys wanted to check out the other videos, the first one we did like just a check-in and out breath. It's a 3-part breath of transitioning to what you need to do. And then the second one is just the Tonglen breath. It's a simple breathing in, breathing out, but it's so difficult when I started practicing it. It's because you're breathing in the suffering of the world, of the people around you, and then you breathe out loving kindness to others. And then today, we just briefly touch on shunya, that in between the breaths, and there's the emotional safety toolkit containing all the little practices we've done from the first and second session until now. Thank you so much for joining me in our mindful communication session for today.